Okay, great. Then we will bring this meeting to order, the February 3rd workshop meeting of Narberth Borough Council. It is 7:33 p.m. Mr. West, could you call the roll, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Fred Bush.
Here.
Muna Elshaks.
Here. Sorry.
Rob McGreevy.
Here.
Michelle Pananopoulos.
Here.
Cindy Rickards.
Here.
Vice President Bob Weisbord.
Hello, I'm here.
Mayor Andrea Deutsch.
I'm here.
And Council President Aaron Mudrick.
Here. All right. I have no specific comments this evening. Ms. Mayer?
Hi. I have one brief comment, and then we have an exciting process. We, as everybody knows, we had some snow in the borough. I just want to let everyone know the snow emergency has ended, so you can go back to parking as you can on the streets. I appreciate everybody's cooperation with getting their cars off the streets. Those who didn't, we did give out a number of tickets to enforce and remind people that they need to get off the streets during a snow emergency to allow our plow vehicles to do their best job in clearing the streets. I would just ask that those who clear their cars or driveways not to push the snow back into the streets, because that just makes it doubly hard for everybody else who then has to re-clear it off the streets. So please put it on a lawn or someplace that is not in everybody's way, and don't put it back on the sidewalks. So I would just ask for people's cooperation in doing the best they can. Next up, we have an exciting process that's going to go on. Officer Mike Vernaccio is going to get promoted tonight to the role of sergeant, the position of sergeant. Mike has been with the borough for a long time. He's our longest serving officer. He served this borough really well, and I am very honored and proud that he is going to be promoted to the position of sergeant. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Gallagher for a moment, just to give a brief introduction and a little bit of history, and to introduce Mike's family.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the time, and thank you to all elected officials that are actually on the call tonight, and anybody else who happens to be watching in, including anybody from the Civil Service Commission. We have quite a few people in the room right now. We're all properly distanced, just to let everybody know. That's why we're not wearing masks, because we have to get Mike sworn in. But however, I would like to take the time to introduce quite a few people real quick from Mike's family. Obviously, Mike's wife, Kim, is here. She's going to be holding the Bible, Mayor, while you administer the oath. And Mike's children are here. He has 3, just to let everybody know. Michael is here, Elena and Frankie, who is their youngest. Also, Mike's brother Dave is here. Dave is a police officer in Havertown, and his wife Stephanie is watching online. Also, Mike's brother Jimmy and his wife Deneen are also watching online, as well as his mother and father, Mike Sr. and Carol, and lastly, his sister Michelle and her husband Mike. So we have a full house, whether in here or on Zoom, watching Mike's promotion. Just to give everybody a quick background, Mike has successfully completed a sergeant's promotional process where it is, it is a written test and an oral test that was administered by the Civil Service Commission. I'd like to thank everybody for helping us along. And I mean this in all sincerity, that any officer that I have right now in the Narberth Police Department, if I was a young officer, I would be proud to have any one of these officers as my sergeant, including Officer Mike Vernaccio, who will soon be promoted to that rank. But the one thing I wanted to mention real quick is we have another guest, Brian Layton, who's the president of the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 28. He's also in the room to watch a member, Mike Vernaccio, get promoted to the rank of sergeant, as well as Ken Watson. Ken Watson and Mike are longtime friends. Mike has been here for 12 years this coming August. They've known each other for a long time. And I have Officer Dan Dutton, Officer Kelly Lynn, and Officer Sean McCabe that are here to watch their colleague get promoted. So with that, Mayor, I'm going to welcome Kim up, and I'm going to have her hold the Bible while Mike puts his left hand on the Bible and holds his right hand, and you administer the oath of office for the police sergeant's position.
Okay.
So all you have to do is, Mike, is hold your left hand and raise your right hand, And if
Chief,
you guys want to step back, I'll actually push it this way.
Yeah, it's a ways.
There we go.
can see them.
Looking
That's
good.
Perfect.
And Mayor, at this point in time, we're going to take it over and administer the oath of office.
Perfect. Mike, please repeat after me. I, Mike Vernaccio,
I, Mike Vernaccio,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the laws and Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
the laws and Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
and the ordinance of the Borough of Narberth,
and the ordinance of the Borough of Narberth,
and that I will discharge the duties of a sergeant
and that I will discharge the duties of a sergeant
for the Narberth Borough Police Department with fidelity.
with the Narberth Borough Police Department with fidelity.
Excellent. Mike, welcome. We're proud of you, and we're sending you a virtual handshake and high five. So thank you so much.
That's good. I caught that kiss. We're going to screen grab that, print it up about 6 feet tall.
So, excellent. We are so proud to have you in this position.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the Borough Council members, too.
Way to go, Mike.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Officer Vernaccio.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sergeant
Thank you.
Vernaccio.
Sergeant Vernaccio.
Sergeant.
Mazel tov.
That's right, it's
Thank you.
official now. Sergeant,
Sergeant
congratulations.
Vernaccio. Excellent. And we're going to get Mike uniformed. We're in the process of getting that all taken care of and tidying up the smaller details, but we'll be all there very shortly.
Mayor, you'll be pleased to know that the uniform's pretty much done.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Sergeant, did you have a few words? I saw on the agenda you had an opportunity for comments. Just saying, the chief
Yeah.
put it there.
I don't know, I just want to thank everybody on the council. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the officers here and everybody who came out to support me tonight, and especially my colleagues who are here.
We're very proud of you, Mike. Thank
We
you.
wish we could all be there.
Thank you
with
very much,
Thank
guys.
you.
We appreciate it. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
All right. And that would be it for my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for organizing that and making it as special as it can be during difficult times. It is a once in a lifetime moment for the sergeant, and I appreciate your attention to that.
Thank
detail.
you, Mr. President. I appreciate that as well.
We'll move to, we'll move the presentation for 3 Elmwood towards the end of our agenda, because I know that many of the consultants who are working on this project are currently in a meeting with Lower Merion Township on this matter. Hopefully they will be available shortly. So let's go to 7A and have a brief discussion of the plastics ordinance and our potential participation in a lawsuit. Who would like to take charge? Councilor McGreevy?
Yeah, this is the Philly Law Department is bringing a case against the Commonwealth for preventing municipalities from passing a plastics ordinance similar to ours. And so they have reached out and asked if we would like to take what they call common interest or be part of the suit. And our attorney has spoken with their attorney, and my understanding is that we would not be paying any of the legal fees.
Right. So this is we're joining as a friend of Philadelphia in this regard. We would not be paying any legal fees, and also it was explained.
I'm sorry, Aaron, to clarify, I think it's important to know this isn't the city of Philadelphia, it's PA Environmental.
Thank you. PA Environmental, and also that the exposure to the borough for participating is extremely limited. That is right. There's no real downside to us here. Mm-hmm. So we have this ordinance on the books, and we're coming in and saying, listen, we've done this and it's working for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Westchester would also be included as a friend, on this suit.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments from council members? The public will have an opportunity when we get to public comment if they have some thoughts. All right, hearing none. I will close this. We'll have a public comment, and then is the plan that if this is to move forward, it would be on our business agenda in the next meeting in February? Mr. West, is that what your understanding is?
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. I would guess that it would be a resolution, and we could, if I'm hearing what I think I'm hearing, I will ask Solicitor Walco to draft an ordinance or a resolution for this.
Mhm. Yeah.
To be ready for the business meeting in 2 weeks.
Councilor Al-Shaks?
Sorry if I missed this. Can we see a copy of the, what would it be, a complaint? Can we see a copy of the draft before the business council meeting? Okay,
Yeah, we can circulate that. Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go to 8A, infrastructure. Councilor Bush.
Sure. We met last week. We had a discussion about, among other things, the stormwater updates, the changes to our stormwater ordinance, which have become more complicated than originally envisioned. We're adopting elements of the state's model ordinance, which are mostly administrative. They're not anything that you're going to notice as a resident of Narberth, but they're important kind of definitions to have in place, as well as changing the minimum to trigger a stormwater review. I think the hope is still that that will be on the agenda for the business meeting, although it might slip to March, I'm not sure. We had a discussion about procedures for traffic requests, so we continue to, people are continue to have interest in new traffic signs or other traffic requests. Matt West is working on a procedure for that, and hopefully that should be online within the next couple of months, and we'll be able to process all these requests fairly and equitably. We had a new topic, which is that some skateboarding equipment has been brought to the attention of the borough, that there is a bunch of unused or not currently being used skateboard equipment that has been offered to the borough. This is the kind of thing you find in the skate park. So we discussed it. I think the next step for us, if we decided to move forward, would be to have it inspected and to have it sort of have a professional look over. Just Matt's opinion as well. Have a professional look over these things and determine how they would fit in. How usable they would be, how they would fit in. We've asked the Parks and Recreation Board to discuss this as well. So they are going to be meeting in March, and they're going to be discussing what they think of the idea of giving some of this skateboarding equipment a home, where it might go, what their opinion is as a body, and they'll be bringing that back to us in March. Michelle, did you have anything to add about that? So you brought it to our attention.
No, I just think that there's certainly a good bit of enthusiasm in the community. That's where this sort of percolated up from community members, and then through the Recreation Board and the Infrastructure Committee. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. I just want to caution all of us not to get ahead of ourselves. And I think what we tried to emphasize in infrastructure, and I think it's been communicated to the Recreation Board, that let's just take this one step at a time. There are a lot of issues that would need to be resolved to make this happen, including liability, accessibility, location. But like probably step one is bring council, maybe bring to infrastructure or to council, whichever is meeting first, a concrete proposal to say, this is somebody who's qualified to inspect and inventory this equipment, and this is what the cost would be. Authorize us to get it done. So let's just kind of go through. I don't think there's any reason to believe this equipment is going to fly away tomorrow, and there's a lot of it. So let's, I would like to see this get like a fair opportunity to get done. We just sort of cautioned Recreation Board to sort of work with us to do it in an orderly way, so we can feel confident that if we even consider the other issues of where to put it and how to install it and how to pay for those things and how to insure it, we'll be putting it on a basic foundation of knowing that the equipment is good. So step one, get us a proposal to.
You muted.
Yeah, so
Okay.
this popped up just before the last recreation board meeting. They haven't had a chance to discuss it, so hopefully in March they'll
Oh.
come back to it.
Okay.
Mayor Deutsch.
Just while we're on the subject of skateboards, I very recently received a letter from a young man detailing all the reasons why Narberth should have a skate park. And he included lots of facts and information, and I will disseminate that to the committee, or I'll get that over to the committee so that they can take a look at it and have that input.
Yeah, when I was on the Parks and Recreation Board, we received a couple of similar requests. We continue to hear, anytime we have a survey about what can we do with the parks, skate park comes up. So there's definitely, community interest. That's one reason why we're, looking into this. We hear you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Fred, I'd just like to offer up, if you proceed from steps, 1, 2, and 3, which Michelle, you highlight are really important first steps. But if we move farther down that path, I also think FNA should take a look at a skate park as a potential economic development tool. I know skate parks are often destination spots, and I would hope that we would bring lots of shoppers and patrons into the borough. So I'd suggest we could kind of partner strategically with the NBA to make sure we capitalize off potential visitors.
Okay. All right. Is that all for infrastructure?
That's it.
All right. Finance and administration, Councilor Rickards.
Nothing new to update or report other than the NBA has communicated that no businesses have yet to come forward with their new initiated grant program. So just a reminder to Narberth businesses that there is a built environment matching grant coordinated through the Narberth Business Association that will help with funds used to support COVID shopping or dining. That's all.
All right. Thank you. All right, public health and safety.
Okay, we just met before this meeting, and one recommendation that came to us was from the EAC, and they're recommending that we resubscribe to ICLEI for $500 a year. And
how much?
It's $500 per year.
Okay.
So we had been with them, if you remember, in the pilot that we were a part of. It was a grant program through the state. And the membership does give us access to their consultants and the ClearPath software, which we've already populated with our greenhouse gas inventory. So they would like to use part of the $10,000 budget line, to pay this $500 membership. So that's something that we discussed as a committee, and we would recommend to the full council. We are also working with the Shade Tree Commission to possibly revise their ordinance and possibly use the UNO process to find more planting sites. So we're just looking at different ways to do that with Shade Tree, and maybe in a month or two we'd be ready to come back with something on that. But that's still working its way through our committee. We did look at the dog barking ordinance because we've had requests to amend that ordinance to make it more specific, and we had the solicitor review it and make suggestions. And I think at the next council meeting in 2 weeks, we could discuss that more in detail, if you like.
Okay.
And I guess the last thing is the MOU. The chief is keeping us apprised, and it should be within a few months this spring that he would be able to present the MOU to full council for our approval with Lower Merion.
Great. Any comments or questions for Mr. McGreevy? Go ahead, Councilor Rickards.
Aaron, you can shuffle this to new business our next meeting if it's not appropriate here. But Rob, we received an email from a concerned neighbor about speed, which we often get obviously concerns about speed. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for public health and safety, infrastructure, and potentially FNA to think about how we can support issues of speed, particularly in the downtown area, now that we're encouraging diners to be eating outside, shoppers to be waiting outside for COVID safe. If there are some tools that we can use in the built environment, kind of per that budget line that we added to public safety, to do some remediation and traffic calming. I don't know where to put that in agenda or what committee to land that in. It could conceivably be in yours or potentially infrastructure. FNA can certainly help out as a downtown initiative, but I just wonder if that's on your committee radar.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. We did receive that letter as well from a resident on Dudley, I think.
Yes.
So, yeah, so I would be happy to partner with the other committees. I mean, we are in the middle of establishing, or at the beginning of establishing that process that we've talked about for road signs. And I don't know if we want to expand that process to include these kinds of requests about traffic calming.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Well, how are we doing, Mr. West, regarding our consultant friends?
I believe they are.
Mr. Young has us on mute, but Mr. Fromhold.
I believe they are still presenting to Lower Merion right now.
Maybe you guys lost me.
Having trouble hearing you, Aaron.
Yeah, let's try it now. I seem to have I came out of the void.
That's good.
How are we doing, Mr. West, on getting our consultants?
I believe they are still presenting to Lower Merion at the moment.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is actually move to public comment. We'll take public comments on any matters not including 3 Elmwood. And then if there are public comments on 3 Elmwood, we'll circle back and have another public comment after we get our presentation. Would anyone like to make a public comment not related to 3 Elmwood? If so, you can, I don't think there's too many people here. Go ahead and just state your name and address. Cal Marie, go ahead.
So I have a comment about 201 Sabine. Are we going to be discussing 201 Sabine tonight?
There's nothing on the agenda, but you can feel free to, take your 3 minutes and
all right.
Say whatever.
So my comment about 201 Sabine, at the last Borough Council meeting, the RES Elizabeth Beckett had made her presentation about what the neighbors want based on the survey that was sent out. That 20-some% of the public had completed the survey. And of that survey, the top 10 items were parks, green space, open space, skate park, no housing, food bank, playground, and pool. And it seems that the most important things, the 284 of the respondents said outdoor public space for community gathering and recreation. 174 said preserving existing daycare, and 158 said indoor public space for community gatherings. And then the survey also said that the public desires specifics in the underlying information, such as actual costs and economic impact on that building, and clarity of the council's intentions regarding the ongoing ownership to other dispositions and approaches, and transparency. And there was a big concern that we all raised about the limitations based on online. So my comment is, last meeting, despite all of this, a vote was taken by the council to go ahead with the RES to, quote, come up with what we want. And my concern is, what we want, what we residents want, is right in front of you with what the presentation was. And I would like to know how this council is going to act on what the community wants for 201 in preserving the second largest open space in the borough. We're telling you what we want. Why are you going ahead with Elizabeth Beckett and asking her to find an answer, or find what we, meaning what the council wants, is how I took that. And we also want to know how we're going to trust what you're going to do for the community, since there's been so little transparency since the meeting when a vote was taken right after the presentation to proceed, instead of taking that information, mulling it over, talking with it about the public. It really seems that you're trying to ram something through instead of listening exactly to what the public has to say and what the public wants. So how is the process moving forward? What's happening? And I understood that you asked Elizabeth to have a presentation tonight, and it doesn't appear that she has one. What's the process going on? What is she doing? And what's the cost now? Have we used up our $14,000 of her retainer fee? And is she on an hourly basis now?
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. I can advise that she is on an hourly basis. She has not used up her fee, and she requested more time to prepare the information. So that's where we are. So expect Ms. Beckett to be back at a future meeting at a future time.
Now, will that be at the next council meeting, or is that when will we know?
I don't know. I don't know when she'll have that information for us, but it'll be on the agenda when it is ready.
And then how is the public going to be engaged?
It will be if she has more information for us, it'll be presented at a public meeting. So it'll be posted on the borough website.
All right.
But there's no other public comment.
There's a hand up, Aaron.
Well, I guess we can move into executive session. Can we move out the members of the public, and we can have our executive session, and then we will join into this meeting?
Did you say there was more public comment, Fred? You saw a hand up?
There is.
Yeah, Lawrence Goldberg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hi. Hi.
Mr. Goldberg, I'm sorry. I
didn't
see your face. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
I was not quick enough on the trigger. I just have a couple quick things. I'll try to talk fast. One of them is related to procedurally. I would really appreciate, after having done some 500 or 600 school board meetings in my career, if you guys could relax for this. I understand that you have the right and the ability to limit comments to 3 minutes. When there's something of great public importance like this, it's really difficult, especially when you only have like 8 or 10 participants, if you strictly adhere to that. And I would also request whether in future motions, if that public comment could come before the vote and not afterwards, so that we could actually, so that we could be involved in commentary that may be helpful to other council members. That's one comment. My other comment is, and I have emailed board members to share my thoughts, so I won't rehash that. But I think the option of a partial repurpose of the building and should be looked into in more detail, wherein you would be taking down the oldest and most troublesome parts of the building and trying to preserve what you can, and coming up with a partial solution that might be able to maybe not be everything to everybody, but both preserve some space for the kinds of functions the community wants, and also be more financially viable. And I guess what I'm wondering is there some other type of expertise that could be tapped upon? Because I understand that RES is sort of, their task seems to be community engagement, surveys, summarizing community input, but I don't see any sort of engineering, construction, folks coming in and looking at, what costs would be for different types of options. And I don't know that RES necessarily even has that expertise. And if they do, I can't imagine that they would be able to do it for the small scope of their contract. So my question would be whether you've considered bringing in any other expertise or finding some other way to get that data, which would be so important for the process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goldberg. And yes, I think if there was a will to move something forward, that sort of information is exactly what we would pursue. Anyone else? Public comment? I think that was it. Mr. West, do you know if our team is ready for 3 Elmwood?
They are still,
Okay.
my sources indicate that the commissioners are asking questions, but if needed, Chris can join our meeting.
No. So what we're going to do is we are going to move the members of the public into the waiting room. That includes the Civic Association stream here. We will go into our executive session. We'll deal with our executive session.
Okay, Mr. President, I believe everybody in the waiting room has been readmitted. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Then we will rejoin into public session, go to 6A, which is a presentation from the developer at 3 Elmwood with a tentative sketch plan. Mr. Yan, I could hand over to you and you can sort of get us started. We do have Todd Bressi here from the Planning Commission and Eric Johnson from our team, and Mr. Fromhold and Mr. Falcone, I believe, is here too. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much for pushing us down your agenda so we could finish up in Lower Merion. We did receive approval with the same conditions that were suggested from the Planning Commission on Monday night without any changes. And so I'm happy to run through the presentation. I don't know if Fred wanted to say anything ahead of time, but let's see if
I'm just getting on here. For whatever reason, my camera isn't working. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you, Mr.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I want to say is thank you, and thank you in a couple of respects for all the time that your Planning Commission has spent, in particular Mr. Bressi, in really taking this plan from where we began to where we are now, which, as you will hear from Chris, I think has been quite a journey, but one that's a good one, and I think good for both communities, Lower Merion and Narberth. Thank you also for being patient with us tonight as we concluded our meeting in Lower Merion, which got started late. And we just want to inform you that the Commission conditions of approval that have been worked out to the satisfaction of both planning commissions, and I think joined in by the Montgomery County Planning Commission, as evidenced by its latest review letter, that those conditions were approved without any modification last night by the Building and Planning Committee in Lower Merion Township, which is your counterpart, your caucus meeting counterpart. So with that, I would turn it over to Chris.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Thank you. So this is the existing conditions plan. I'm going to just quickly, with my mouse here, outline the property. On the top of the plan, which is the northern side, that is along the railroad tracks. On the other side of the railroad tracks is the park. And so running kind of in the upper left-hand corner down in the middle of the plan, this is Wynwood Road. And then running right above the title block is Elmwood Avenue. And so right through the middle is the East Indian Branch Creek, which is in a stone channel. And so this is the existing conditions plan. There's an existing home at 3 Elmwood Avenue, which will remain unchanged. So this is the existing conditions. If it's okay, I'm going to run through a quick timeline of just to show where we started and where we are now. So this was the plan with the original submission, which was 2 5-unit multifamily buildings for a total of 10 units with a 2-way driveway down the center. And then after several meetings with both Lower Merion staff and Narberth staff, we came to the understanding, basically, the larger multifamily buildings didn't really fit in with the neighborhood. And so although they were permitted by code, and that, we had a plan that we believe was by right that, didn't really fit in with the neighborhood. So we went back and forth. We developed this plan, which was 3 quad buildings for a total of 12 units, and it had one-way driveway in on one side and one way out on the other. However, there were still concerns with this plan as we still coordinated. We did present, I think, Mr. Bresci, I saw his overview letter from the Planning Commission to Council. I think it did a very nice job of really writing out the progression of where we were. We went to the Planning Commission several times, twice, I think, just Narberth, and then twice in joint planning commissions with Lower Merion Township. So this was the plan with the quads. There were still concerns about the density, the parking, the impervious coverage, and the proximity to the street. So we did make some changes to that plan to then end up with 3 twin buildings, which are a total of 6 units. So the parking count has been reduced. The buildings have been pushed further back from Wynwood Road. And one thing that I did not mention that I should is this property is in both Lower Merion and Narberth. And this line that I'm tracing here is the boundary between the two. And basically it was the old boundary of Wynwood Road before it was realigned. And so we end up with this strange piece on the eastern side of the road where we have a portion in Narberth and a portion in Lower Merion. And so as we've gone through this plan, we've worked to meet both codes. On the western side of this line, we work to meet the Lower Merion codes, and on the eastern side, we work to meet the Narberth codes. However, we, through the changes, have tried to be respectful to both. Particularly the building width was a big one, and the distance from the street, I think, were 2 really big ones for Narberth that actually somewhat conflicted with the Lower Merion code. The Lower Merion code has a minimum frontage build out along the setback line with no maximum, whereas the Narberth code has a minimum and a maximum. And so in order to get around that, we did have to break up the separate buildings, and we actually added this public gathering space up near the intersection, which helped reduce our calculation so we could reduce the width of this building. Lower Merion also has a minimum 10-foot front yard setback and a maximum of 20, whereas Narberth has a minimum of 25. And so we work to try to meet both of those codes as well, where the front of the porches is now at the maximum Lower Merion line, which makes the front facade of the buildings right at the Narberth 25-foot line. So we've really worked hard as we've gone along here, and really through we didn't do it by ourselves. It was through input from both Lower Merion and Narberth staff's planning commissions to get to this point. So this is the current plan. Another thing I'd like to mention is the floodplain line that runs through the property as I follow through here. In fact, I can trace that as well. So the floodplain line on the FEMA map is listed as Zone A. What that means is it's not a studied stream, and it was just an approximation of where the floodplain line would be based on topography, soils, and other historic data. And so what we've had to do through part of the development here is we had to calculate the elevation of that creek, and that's what the new blue line is. And so you can see how there are locations in the back of the property where the blue line ended up closer to the creek, and then there's locations here that I traced that are further from the creek and further into the property. And we submitted those calculations to Pannoni and Associates, who happen to be the engineers for both Lower Merion and Radnor. We've made some changes along the way to those calculations to the point where I believe they are satisfied. We also submitted to FEMA, who will now have to approve those calculations. So we submitted in about a month and a half ago in early to mid-December. And so I'll note that's really the calculation of where the 100-year floodplain is. You'll notice that all of the development is uphill of that. So I know some of the concerns are the effect to the floodplain. all of the proposed improvements are located above that 100-year floodplain elevation. So I know that was a big concern. Another thing to note is the riparian buffer is a big concern. And so both the Narberth and Lower Merion codes have the same requirements for the width of the buffer, which basically ideally is 50 feet, but can be reduced depending on the property requirements. And so in this case, it can be reduced to 10. However, as you saw in Mr. Bressy's packet, we have several conditions or a whole list of conditions of approval that we have agreed to comply with. And there are several of those that have to do with that floodplain area. And even though the requirement is only 10 feet, we're going to discuss with both the Lower Merion Conservancy, Narberth and Lower Merion about what we can do in the whole entire floodplain area to really enhance the floodplain. One thing that I'd like to talk about there is I know from the street, a lot of people see the overgrown brush that really lines the edge of the sidewalk. What I don't think they see is that behind that, and there's kind of an opening there, which I assume is to get a mower through to get through. But once you get through, it opens up, and there's really grass areas on both sides of the creek. And so it isn't really the dense forest that I think you think it might be when standing on Wynwood Road. We do have on the team, although it's not really their turn to prepare any plans yet, we have a landscape architect, Black and Thomas Panzak, and then we have just recently added to the team a floodplain restoration specialist, that's Land Studies out of Lidditz, Pennsylvania. Not a professional I'm used to having on the team, but it was appropriate for this project. We also have our traffic engineer, Frank Tavani, on the project. He has spoken to PennDOT both by phone and exchanged emails, starting back in the summer when we submitted this plan. It was submitted in early July. And so, we presented the early plans to PennDOT, got some of their feedback along the way, and have presented the most recent plans. Certainly they can't render a decision on it until we make a formal application, but we think we're on the right path with the layout that we have here. We can't really make an application with them until we are in they want to see final plans. They don't want sketch plans. They don't want something that will change. Their application requires that we have top and bottom of curb elevations everywhere in stormwater design. We're not really at that stage yet. In the tentative sketch phase, we're really looking at massing and scale and overall layout. I know that traffic is one of the major issues here, both the vehicular traffic and the pedestrian traffic. We have gone from a singular two-way driveway to a one-way loop, and I know there are concerns about the proximity of the driveways to the intersection. We've agreed to a condition to further investigate that into potentially pulling the driveways further from the intersection if we can, or possibly making them back to a two-way. I'll tell you that they're part of the reason we moved away from that from the beginning were both Narberth and Lower Merion zoning code issues with the two-way driveway in this zoning district. But there will be a traffic study, and there's a whole section in the conditions of approval of what that traffic study will entail and things that we need to investigate. And some of the things that were in there, but also really strengthened on Monday night, were investigations into the pedestrian traffic across the site and in the surrounding area, really. Currently there's a 4.5 foot wide sidewalk that's right behind the curb. We are proposing for there to be a grass verge and then a 5 foot wide sidewalk. But we have agreed to further investigate that to see if we can improve it even further. So I think the traffic, the floodplain, I guess the stormwater is always a major concern. At this stage in the game, we aren't into the stormwater design yet. We have located on the plan a potential location for the stormwater management system, which is this dark dashed black line on the plan here underneath some of the parking area. This red line that extends up off the plan is an estimate of where the drainage area would be, which would drain to that system and essentially almost everything on the site will drain to it. There are some areas out front, like the front walkways, that drain out to the street. But the stormwater management system will be designed to meet both the Lower Merion and Narberth codes. Overflow from that, we're projecting to be a level spreader right above the floodplain. And so I think that's a brief overview, or maybe not too brief, of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions, or Fred, if you think I've missed anything I should touch on, or Mr. Bressi, I'd be happy to explain something further. Mr. Mutrick, I think you're on mute.
Yep. Mr. Fromhold, if there's something that Mr. Yan missed, feel free to add it, and then I'll put a little context around our next steps here in our conversation.
No, I think he did a fine job giving an overview, and we're happy to answer any specific questions about what he covered or anything he may not have covered.
So thank you. So the first thing I'd like to cover, I'm going to actually ask Mr. Johnson, because our solicitor is not present this evening. Could you talk us through the stages that any project like this goes through, and where we are in sort of what's being presented to us now?
All right, so good evening, everyone. So right now, this is the sketch plan submission, which Mr. Yan kind of alluded to. It is kind of the establishing the preliminary layout of what a project is going to look like. In this case, this sketch plan is actually goes into a pretty good amount of detail, largely because there's just the complexity of the site, splitting municipalities, and really trying to work everything out. Kind of dictated that level of information. But if this was to proceed, we still, after this, we would then be entering the land development process, which consists of the preliminary plan submission and the final plan submission. Both of those submissions involve review by the Planning Commission, review by Council, and then the public comment opportunities that go along with that. During each one of those steps, that is also reviewed by the borough's technical staff, being the borough engineer, being the zoning officer, being the traffic engineer, as well as Montgomery County Planning Commission. This is also, because it's also in Lower Merion, is going concurrently being reviewed by the Lower Merion counterparts across the municipal boundary. So this would be best way to describe it, step one of a 3-step process.
Mm-hmm. And also, I believe PennDOT is involved because there's a state road here.
Correct. PennDOT would also, they have jurisdiction over Wynwood Road, so therefore they have the approval for things along the property frontage. And then also you would have, as Mr. Yan was saying, a FEMA approval that would be pending for any kind of modification or clarification of the floodplain boundary.
Thank you. So I'll give Mr. Bressi an opportunity to offer the comments of the Planning Commission. I know there was a vote on Monday night and a letter came to us council members. Mr. Bressi, maybe you could bring everybody, the public and all of us, up to speed on where the Planning Commission stands on this project.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. The letter I sent today, I just read it, and I think it does a pretty good job of summarizing things. This application has been in the borough's hands since July. As the applicant said, it's been revised a few times, and the Planning Commission has met with the applicant in public meetings 4 times. Once for informational purposes, I believe in October, and then again in November, December, and February to begin discussing, and jointly with Lower Merion Township, to begin discussing the application and ultimately voting on it last night. All along, I do want to say that we have been working very closely with Lower Merion Township, with its staff, in the meetings with the applicant, and we have benefited greatly from that partnership. They've been very helpful to us, and I know that this collaboration has made things proceed more smoothly for everyone involved, and we're looking forward to continuing that. Throughout this this review process, a few key issues emerged as I outlined in my letter. And one was traffic, particularly traffic safety in this area, particularly ingress and egress to this site from East Wynwood Road, particularly because the traffic lane closest to the property is a dedicated right turn lane leading to the intersection, the signalized intersection above. And there was great concern about that. And there are similar concerns about additional traffic movements and additional traffic in general could make it less safe for pedestrians and bicyclists in this area. The second concern had to do with the riparian corridor and stormwater, equally really, both the prevalence of flooding in this area and the concern that if stormwater were not managed properly in this development, that it could make matters worse, and also a concern that the riparian corridor, which is part of a longer corridor that leads upstream is Narbrook Park and downstream is Short Ridge Park, both of which have had enhancements recently, that the corridor be maintained in a way using the best practices possible. Those were the key issues, I think, and there's some discussion of them in our letter and in our minutes. Those, as folks have been saying, are normally issues that are flagged now, but really investigated more thoroughly at the preliminary plan phase. The commission voted 4-1 to recommend approval of this project. The vote also included a recommendation that the Borough Council issue 3 waivers and make 1 determination in regard to this project. So those are the official actions that Borough Council will be asked to take. The waivers are to the subdivision and land development ordinance, and they are outlined in my letter. One is to waive the requirement that the applicant provide profiles or drawings of the surrounding roads, which is a pretty pro forma waiver that's almost always issued in land developments in Narberth. The second is to allow the applicant to have all of the parking spaces, I believe it's all the parking spaces, at a slightly reduced dimension, 9 feet by 8 feet, 18 feet. Normally, we only allow a portion of a parking lot to have those smaller spots. We find that to be consistent with our desire to reduce impervious surface in developments like this. And the third waiver is to allow for a non-perpendicular subdivision line. Normally, we like for subdivision lines to be straight and to be perpendicular to a street or a tangent of a curved street. 2 of the lines they've drawn are consistent with that, but one of the subdivision lines follows the stream course, which we find in this case to be a practical solution to this site, particularly because the applicant has agreed to conditions that would allow the borough access to the stream corridor in case of emergency or in case maintenance were needed. So from a functional point of view, we think that's not an issue. And then the way the determination is a very small technical matter, but when a lot is on a corner, as is lot 2, I don't know who's controlling the screen, but perhaps you can show you that's the lot that's in the lower part of the site. That is on a corner. It's on the corner of Elmwood Avenue and East Wynwood Road, just by a hair's breadth, but it is. And when a lot is on a corner, the zoning code says that a new building on that lot must, the primary goal is for it to face the street which has the most buildings facing it already. So in this case, our zoning code would say we'd really prefer for that building to face Elmwood Avenue. You recall that became important when we reviewed Forest Avenue development a few years ago. In this case, the Planning Commission finds that's impractical and that the solution that the applicants come up with is desirable, and therefore we request that the Borough Council make that determination under the code. So those are the actions that you're being asked to take, and by a 4-1 vote, the Commission has recommended those. The The opposing vote was from a member of the commission who was extremely concerned about the traffic safety issues and felt that they were so important that it was not appropriate to approve this tentative sketch plan at this time. Last thing I'd like to say is I did listen into the Lower Merion Township Building and Zoning Committee, and the questions and concerns that the commissioners raised pretty much tracked these concerns. They were concerned about the traffic safety. They were concerned about the flooding issues. In both cases, made some pretty clear and strong comments about their expectations for what the preliminary plan would include. They seem to urge a exploration of a different circulation system that would potentially move some of the access and egress further to the south, which is actually one of the conditions already, that the applicant explore this. They also raised a third issue, which was not in my letter and not really a point of discussion at the Planning Commission, which is the interjurisdictional nature of this site, which they felt in the long run would not be viable, particularly because this is not only an intermunicipal boundary, but it is also the boundary of two state representative districts. And so they felt that in the long run, it would be better for this to be in one municipality. And I believe some of the commissioners expressed an intent to begin discussions about resolving these matters before the preliminary plan is submitted, so that there's more clarity about how these properties will be managed, or whether or not it would make more sense for it just to be in one municipality. So we did not comment on that. The Planning Commission doesn't think it's our purview to investigate those matters, but that was something that the commissioners discussed. So that's, Mr. President, my report.
You're muted, Aaron.
Thank you so much, especially for adding the comments of what just happened in the Lower Merion meeting. That's good information for all of us. So I can't see all of you as well when we're sharing screen, but I think it's important to keep sharing. Oh, we just stopped sharing. We'll go back to it at some point. Council members, do you have any questions for any of the experts who are here? Councillor Al-Shaks.
Yeah, Mr. Yan, in plain speak, you are seeking to have FEMA reduce the existing floodplain or move it off that property by paying someone to do a study. You're muted.
No, we're not asking that it be moved off the property. I'm going to switch back to the existing conditions plan. So there are several lines shown here. This line that I'm tracing is the current location of the FEMA line for the 100-year floodplain. And that is zone A, which is not calculated. So it was just someone's approximation of where it would be. And so we are required to calculate it to find out exactly where it is based on the current requirements. And so when we did that, I'm going to switch back to another plan that's a little easier to see it. We found that line is this blue line that I'm going to trace. And so in the back here, you can see that the black line to the blue line gets a little closer to the creek. And then as we get closer to Wynwood Road, you can see that the blue line is now further from the creek. And so this is based on the calculations on where that line is for the 100-year storm event. And we submitted that to both Lower Merion and Narberth to their engineers for review. And I believe they have accepted the latest round of calculations, which we then submitted to FEMA. And so, no, we're not trying to remove it. We are defining it as we are required to.
Go ahead, Councillor.
I have another question. Mr. Fromhold, did you happen to see what Haverford Avenue looked like this past summer after that storm that was maybe or maybe not considered a 100-year storm? Did you happen to see the flooding?
I did not. I'm somewhat historically familiar with the flooding which has occurred over the years in that area. And I have no doubt it may have been significant, as it certainly has been in the past.
It is, and that is one of my biggest concerns about this development, that with so much more impervious space being added right next to the floodplain, it's only going to make flooding matters much worse.
Right. At the Building and Planning Committee in Lower Merion about an hour or so ago, one of the commissioners had photographs of recent flooding in that area, which was considerable. And while I think most often the civil engineers, both for the developer and the municipality, will say that you should expect a marginal improvement after development from what was the case before development. I don't know that that condition will disappear by virtue of this development, but I'm quite certain that compliance with the ordinances in Lower Merion and Narberth, which Mr. Yan described, will be met in this development, will ensure that that condition is in no way exacerbated, if anything, modestly in the other direction. But there certainly is flooding.
Thank you. Well, I don't have pictures to show you, but there have been several cars flooded and ruined in our borough parking lot or on those streets, including borough cars, because of flooding. Thank you.
All right, any other council members? Actually, Ms. Mayor, you're next on my list here.
So I think in looking at this, my biggest concern is that shared by the person on the planning commission who had the cars coming out on Wynwood Road. Mr. Yan mentioned that, you know, you recognize that that could be an issue and that PennDOT will have to be look at it and approve it. But you mentioned there could be an alternate. Could you tell us what your biggest challenge is going to be and what are possible proposals for making it a safer egress and ingress?
Sure. So there is a condition of approval that requires that we look into that further. The suggestion is that it be a two-way driveway south of this Lot 2 building. And so somewhere in this area here. And so I guess our struggle with that is twofold. One is that both the Lower Merion and Narberth codes restrict the width of a driveway in the first lot layer or front yard setback, depending on which municipality you're in. So that in itself is a struggle for the width of the driveway. But then also through the changes on this plan with the change from 2 buildings to 3, the pushback of the buildings from closer to the street further back, we're really constrained by both the floodplain on the lower side and the rear yard setback on the higher side. You know, what the developer would prefer would be all units that are exactly the same and have 2 car garages in the back. But through pushing these buildings back on the site and making the other changes, you'll see that this unit 4B is, you know, sawtoothed, and so is 2A, that if we tried to squeeze in another driveway next to this one, we would just further be crunching these buildings. So those are, you know, the struggles, but we have agreed to further look into that. I know that one of the other suggestions would be, right now we have a counterclockwise loop, if you call it that, where you come in the site on the southernmost driveway and travel up to the north and out again. One suggestion would be to reverse that so that the driveway that is exiting the property is further from the intersection. So that's one of the things for us to investigate.
Mayor, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it gives
I know your concern remains, but
well, yeah, the concern remains of safety, but I guess that would be up to PennDOT. So,
and our planning commissions for further analysis as we get into the more detailed phases of the land development.
sure.
Anyone else? council
I have
members?
a question for you, Mr. President. Is tonight just a presentation by the applicant, or do we intend?
This is just a presentation by the applicant. We would intend to have a motion to approve this tentative sketch plan at our meeting on is it the 17th?
Okay, then I just have a question for Mr. Fromholm. Good evening. Fred, how does the current owner of this property, who do they pay their taxes to? Lower Merion or Narberth or they distributed proportionally?
While I am not certain, I understand, and Chris, or if Mr. Falcone is on, he can correct me. I think there is some division of the tax revenue between the two municipalities. Is that your understanding, Chris?
Yes, according to the county records, if you go online, there's two separate parcels. One in even though it's one property, they're split up into different tax map units, one for the Lower Merion portion and one for the Narberth. And according to that, taxes are paid in both municipalities.
Is it fair to assume that the taxes will continue to be allocated in exactly the same way as they have been historically after the subdivision?
So great question. I think that right now they're allocated partially because of where the building is. And so the taxes are much higher on the Narberth side than on Lower Merion, because on Lower Merion it's just some vacant land. That was a similar question to what one of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners raised. And I think Mr. Leswing, the Director of Building and Planning over there, answered it best, because there have been some more high-level conversations, I guess, than our team about trying to fix that municipal boundary so that the property could be entirely in one municipality, not just for taxes, but also for voting and other things. So it's a good question. It's a little above the project team's capabilities right now, but I think once this or assuming this tentative sketch plan is approved, I think that is then something that can be presented to the people, to the decision makers to help solve that.
So, Aaron, Mr. President, I'm not certain. I have additional questions about this particular issue. I'm not sure this is the venue for them. But I'm not comfortable voting on. I'm not comfortable voting on at the next meeting on the conditions of approval until we have more clarity around this. Everybody's frozen.
I think the chair is frozen, but some others are not.
Anybody home?
There you are. There you are, Aaron.
Here,
you're back.
You froze up for a bit there.
You said you were not comfortable.
I'm not. I'm just. I guess I have additional questions about this matter. I don't think this is probably the right venue to ask those. We may need to discuss some things with our solicitor. But I guess before we finalize these conditions of approval, I'd like more clarity about the distribution of the taxes post development. I guess I'd like to see the allocation of taxes be maintained as they currently are and as they've been paid historically as a condition.
Yes, I know that Mr. Walko has been discussing this and been discussing it also with the Lower Merion solicitor. And I think this is a conversation that is, from the municipality standpoint, it's something we need to work out. It's an important issue to work out, because with this line where it is, it creates a lot of, I can see that if I was in unit lot 2, maybe I have one state representative. If I'm living in the rear of lot 3, I have a different state representative. If I have the front bedroom, I have another state representative. I mean, it's chaotic. So it's, the road used to track this line, right? And then it was moved. So we'll work this, and I think we'll get some more information for everybody, and hopefully a possible massaging that simplifies things for everybody.
Thank you. Otherwise, my question, I guess, I think I know the answer because I watched the meetings the other night, but I was intrigued and interested in the suggestions that the Lower Merion Conservancy made about creating some kind of access for the public between the Narberth Tunnel along the creek bed, through the riparian, that corridor along the creek. And it made a lot of sense to me. And I was wondering if the applicant will be following up with Lower Merion Conservancy about the possibility of incorporating some of their ideas into the future plan.
I think it's safe to say we will be meeting with them, and we will be considering all of the ideas that are exchanged. There are a number of meetings between the environmental bodies in both Lower Merion and Narberth, as well as the Lower Merion Conservancy and the Shade Tree Commissions. And there will be a lot of discussion before we actually complete what would be our landscape plan component. And I would think that pedestrian issues along the stream corridor would be addressed in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members, Ms. Panopoulos, I think you were unmuting prior to Bob's comments.
Cindy, were you unmuting as well? Whoever goes, it doesn't matter. Okay.
I can only see a couple of you at once.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Sure. Yeah, I don't want to repeat too much of what's already been said. I will say this much. I have received a lot of comments, a lot of feedback from Narberth residents, a lot more than I normally would on a project this early in a development phase. And I have to be candid and say none of it has been positive. And that is also somewhat unusual because there are usually at least a few voices who see some benefit in a development, even if it may be the case that it tends to be the case that communities are not always favorable to development. But this is one where uniformly, pretty much all the feedback I've received has suggested that our community members view this as a high impact development for Narberth that places a burden on Narberth and doesn't deliver much in the way of benefit, if anything. I think I realize that this project spans 2 municipalities, but I think it's also important to recognize that the land is about 80% in Narberth, and the proposed developable area to the west of the creek, and of the building area, the building footprints, it's over 70% in Narberth, and certainly the parking areas are 100% in Narberth. And I think that Narberth residents are asking us to make sure that their voices are heard in this process. The impacts that have been brought up are environmental, traffic, pedestrian and bicycle safety, the same things that we've already talked about at this meeting. I look forward to the Narberth Environmental Advisory Committee having an opportunity to have input into this project. As Mr. Fromholz just indicated, I do not believe that they have given that yet. I would like to hear what they have to say. I think Councilor Elshock's very well discussed the flooding and the FEMA concerns. Todd Bressie. Todd, you did a great job discussing the traffic and vehicular and pedestrian and bicycle concerns. But I would like to emphasize that a little bit because that seems to be, certainly for me personally, and also most of the feedback I've received, the largest area of concern. And also, I think the place where the applicant has the greatest opportunity to actually turn this into a more of a positive benefit for the community, for both communities, for both Narberth and Lower Merion, if we can keep a dialogue open and recognize that we don't have the PennDOT information, we don't have the PennDOT review back yet, but looking at bringing traffic, bringing vehicles into and out of a development, going across a dedicated right turn lane, I think it doesn't look right to most people. It doesn't look terribly safe. Most of us have an experience of this road that tells us it is already a dangerous road, and that is a high pressure intersection. That's why it's now signalized an improvement, but it is still a very challenging a very challenging intersection. Something we haven't talked about at this meeting is the likelihood that with the restriction on left turns, not likelihood, the certainty that with the restriction on left turns out of this project and possibly also into the project, you will see traffic needing to reroute through residential areas, quite possibly right through Shortridge Park. That would be the logical way to get yourself facing the right way if you were coming from, say, Lancaster Avenue. The other way, maybe going through Narberth or Shortridge. These are not roads that are designed, particularly Narberth's, to handle that kind of extra traffic. And I think that we'll have much larger numbers of people living directly on this road and this segment of the road, right quite near the intersection. As it is right now, you will witness pedestrians running for their lives to get across this road. It is pushing strollers. It is a very difficult road to cross. And of course, it connects our lovely municipalities and amenities like parks, Shortridge Park, Narberth Park, access to the train station from Lower Merion. And we will see what PennDOT has to say. And I recognize that the applicant is aware of this and has made some proposals, replacing the sidewalk and adding a verge. But I mean, I think as we know, the sidewalk will not survive the construction anyway. So while I appreciate that improvement, I think we should be looking at stronger measures to address this problem while we have the chance to do it. Both municipalities, as well as a private party that has an interest in making this project be the best it can be, kind of all in the room together. Another thing we haven't discussed tonight was I believe that in the conditions we were talking about exploring, replacing the small footbridge right now that goes over Elmwood. You can sort of see it's off site. You can see it on the drawing. So this is an off-site improvement that the applicant has been considering, and I think that is, thank you for highlighting that, to help mitigate some of the impacts and improve this experience for pedestrians. But I will note that while it would, and I'm not actually sure who owns that bridge or maintains it now at all, to be honest with you, but if that were to happen, while it would provide better access, say from Narberth, to the Narberth train station, you're bringing pedestrians out right at the curb on a road that is essentially inaccessible to many people, children, the elderly, individuals with physical disabilities. There is no safe mid-block crossing anywhere. And I think what we really need is a solution that brings pedestrians safely from Narberth to Lower Merion and back again. And this strikes me as an opportunity to find a solution that would benefit all of us, including future residents potentially of this development should it move forward. And it may not be something where the applicant is on their own to do this. This may be something where we may be able to cooperate together, but I can't really emphasize enough how important I think it is if we are placing residents directly on this road now, a road that has almost no houses on it, and right on this particularly sort of traffic pressured segment of the road, that we really be willing to talk about finding solutions. I know that's not necessarily tentative sketch plan material, but I want to get that out there because I've had so many people who live in Narberth contact me about that. And I've spoken with Lower Merion residents who live on the other side of the road in Shortridge about it as well. Specific to the tentative sketch plan, in the conditions, I just would like to ask for you to consider one small change. We have discussed having a traffic impact study. I believe that's a condition that's been agreed to. I appreciate that. And more recently, the applicant has agreed to a bicycle and pedestrian study. I would notice in condition 22, we have a condition that the applicant will contact the township engineer's office to discuss and develop the assumptions that will be used in the analysis for the traffic impact study, which is a very prudent inclusion because if we don't know what the assumptions are, it's likely that the study will not produce the information that we need. I would ask that we represent that same level of concern in point 17, where the applicant will submit a bicycle and pedestrian study, that we ask the applicant to work with the planning commissions and municipalities to identify an appropriate sort of authority who can discuss and develop assumptions that will be used to underlie the bicycle and pedestrian study. So we make sure we're asking the right questions and getting a study that does actually answer the questions that in condition 17, that we do in fact identify the gaps and obstacles and potential improvements. So I would like to have that referred to an appropriate sort of expert authority to develop the assumptions that will be used in that analysis. Finally, with respect to the saldo waivers, this is from Mr. Young. I guess it's partly a question and it's partly a statement. There were two, but there's one waiver from the saldo that two of them are fine. I'm fine with. Section 450-21.f, which is on the sidelines, right? It says, whenever practical, the sidelines of a lot shall be set at right angles or radial to the right of way for the full length of the sidelines. And I saw in December, Mr. Young, that you presented at the Narberth Planning Commission, you put up a slide that showed what that would look like and said, well, yeah, we could do that. Do you have that slide handy? I don't know if you have it, because it's helpful for folks to understand. Otherwise, we could sort of wave a mouse and show where that would be.
I do. I don't have it for the newest sketch, but I think this is
the old sketch, but it's
close enough.
Close. Yeah,
correct.
Close
this
enough.
Is for the old layout.
Right. So you said, well, yeah, we could do that, but it doesn't make sense. Look, historically, oftentimes we would follow a natural border like a river when we set property lines. And I think historically that's true. It's very pastoral, but we don't really do that so much now. And I think that's the reason why we have a saldo, right? When we're in a more highly developed area where there's more competition for land and land use, I think that's where it makes sense to follow the dictates of the saldo. I'm not sure why we would waive that condition. The other thing that you said in December, which I understand, is you said, look, this is impractical because look, this creates these two slivers of land that are inaccessible to lot one, right? The original lot that fronts on Elmwood, right? They're within lot one, but they're across the creek. Isn't that strange? But the thing of it is that's been the case for this lot forever, right? It's been completely bisected by a creek, and the property owner has never built a footbridge or anything to have access to that. So I don't think that's a particularly compelling reason to waive the requirements in our saldo. There are many ways to get around that, right? That red line could probably be moved to the west and still be compliant and create access on the opposite bank. They could get an easement. They could sell less of the land, and then maybe there would be fewer. Maybe the development would be smaller. There's all kinds of ways around that. It's certainly not impractical to follow the saldo, in my view. So if it were up to me, I would probably not grant that waiver of the saldo. I would ask, or not based on the information that I have. I would ask for some study and ask for a better reason why we cannot follow the saldo. There's another section of the saldo on corner lots. It's in the same section. It's subsection D rather than F. And it says that corner lots will have a minimum lot width, the width required for the applicable zoning district, plus the front yard dimension along all roads. And so, if you look at this lot, which is number 2, I guess the giant one that follows the creek as you proposed it, it's a corner lot, as you pointed out. And that little area down there next to the footbridge is on Elmwood Avenue, but it doesn't comply, right? It does not have the width of a frontage in this zoning district. It's probably 12 feet. Again, that would be alleviated if we complied with the perpendicular lines requirement of the saldo. That would alleviate that problem as well. Then lot 1 would be the corner lot and it would be fine. I'm not really sure why we would grant relief from the saldo in this case. It doesn't seem to be necessary. I'm not sure why we can't draw the lot lines according to the saldo. I don't know if it might create a problem where the center lot, because it's being cut off in part, Is the reason for that because it creates problems with impervious coverage or some other need for this development?
No, we could draw the line by the red or the black shown on this plan, and the development would be fine. We thought it was more practical to run the property line down the stream just in terms of future maintenance and really, knowing where your property boundary is. One of the calls that I get often is for a surveyor to come stake a property boundary, because people don't know where it is, or they think that their neighbor's fence is encroaching, or they're mowing over their line. And so, if we have a line that, this red line that bisects the stream, would seem kind of strange for, these homeowners to mow up to the edge of that red line, and then for the 3 Elmwood owner to have to come over and get this area. And so, you're correct that they deal with that situation now, except the difference is right now they come across the bridge and they have access to everything. If they were cut off from, by either or with the red line, if they were cut off from this area, then, I don't think that they'd be given permission to create a bridge, because it would be entirely in the floodplain. And so really, it doesn't have anything to do with the development. If the waiver weren't granted, we would pick one of these lines and draw that, but we thought it was less practical than drawing the line down the center of the stream, which kind of clearly defines where your property begins and ends.
Thank you. Michelle, is it all right if I move to Cindy, or did you have anything else?
No, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay. Councilor Rickards?
Mine's just a quick comment and basically reiterating what Mona and Michelle said. This project radically changes the entrance to our town, and one, to Michelle's point, is really not welcomed by community members. And while you're maintaining the current stormwater and floodplain, you don't account for future climate change impact, which science tells us will only progress. And I recognize that you're not legally bound to do so, but Narberth is going to bear this burden. We're going to bear the burden on the immediate property, and then, to Mona's point, downtown, where we have seen historic flooding most recently. And while PennDOT will assess the road compliance, we're interested in the safety of our community bikers, walkers, drivers, and we have a higher threshold of safety for our own neighbors here. And this is an intersection that I forbid my son to cross, and I can't in good conscience support allowing other kids or drivers to do so with added development. I share the concerns of our Lower Merion colleagues and counterparts with the split municipalities, and believe that has to be addressed before we can move forward as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other council members we haven't heard from who would like to comment or ask questions? Mr. Bush, go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, first I want to apologize for my Zoom difficulties. So hopefully everyone can see and hear me now. So I'd like to echo the thoughts of so Cindy and Michelle, that we have heard a lot from neighbors. We've heard, I watched the planning commission meeting, and I have never seen so much regret on the part of the planning commission when they've approved or when they've recommended something go forward. It's clear that this fulfills the legal requirements, but it's an open space, which is lacking in Narberth. It is an environmentally sensitive space with the creek running through it, and from a traffic safety point of view, it's an extremely dangerous area. I've crossed it to go to Shortridge. I'm sure we all have, and it feels like one of the more dangerous things that I do. So I think that you have an opportunity here to improve all of these factors. You have an opportunity to look at traffic safety, to look at crossing. You have an opportunity. You already have a sort of an open space amenity in the northwest corner. You've marked out a potential community spot, and I know that there were the recommendations from the Conservancy to open up access to more of the river, to open up a walking path. So you have some opportunities to create more of a community open space than there is now. I mean, right now it's nice to look at, but really it's not something that you can go to as a member of the Narberth community in any way. So you have an opportunity to improve upon that. And you also have an opportunity to work on the stormwater drainage, both through some sort of traditional system that you have marked on the plan, and through riparian improvements, which I think the Conservancy and the EACs of both communities would be happy to talk to you about. So I encourage you to turn these sort of challenges. These are what we're hearing from everybody. It's the loss of open space. It's a dangerous area, and it's a environmentally sensitive area. To turn these into strengths by actually improving what's there. And I think that with these additions, I think that a lot of the neighborhood concern and everybody's concern will be allayed, because I think there really is possibility to improve on these things. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Am I missing anybody? Anybody else? Mr. McGreevy, did you have a comment?
I am very interested. I think what Bob mentioned, the Lower Merion Conservancy piece, and I'm hearing other people echo that too. So I'd love to see that mapped out. Basically, public access, and almost like an extension of the Shortridge River stream.
Okay, thank you. All right. Because of the way we structured our meeting, I'd like to open public comment. This would be if you have a comment, 3 minutes, and as it might relate to this development specifically. I don't know who's here. Just wave your hand, or Mr. Brower, go ahead. You can go first.
Hey, thank you. With your permission, I'd like to read a short statement that I hope will clarify the vote that I made Monday night to recommend approval of the tentative sketch plan. As a member of the Planning Commission, I felt that I was compelled to vote to recommend council approval of the tentative sketch plan, only because I could not find the specific section of the Narberth zoning code that the proposed design violated. The code does not address specific aspects of traffic safety and vehicular circulation that are relevant to this submission, and therefore there is no section of the code that I could point to that demonstrated non-compliance. Because of this, I felt that I had to vote to recommend approval of the tentative sketch plan. If such a section had existed in the code, I would have certainly voted against the tentative sketch plan. As a resident, I am opposed to the subdivision of this lot in the tentative sketch plan. My primary objection to the plan has to do with the vehicular ingress and egress to the site. These curb cuts, particularly the egress, are simply too close to the traffic light in an adjacent intersection. I feel that this proposed design is unsafe and increases the likelihood of accidents at this location. I say this not only as a resident who, like everyone here tonight, has driven through this intersection hundreds of times, but also as an architect with over 40 years of professional experience. I suspect that there is a design that could satisfy these concerns, but that design must include access to the site much further down Windward Road and much further away from the traffic signal. Today, we have not seen such a design. I have other concerns with the tentative sketch plan. I believe that there is still too much parking being proposed, and that no parking or any paving should be permitted in the rear yard setback abutting the railroad embankment. I also feel that public pedestrian access should be provided along Indian Creek in a manner that will extend the pedestrian trail system from Shortridge Park, and that more strategies be required to protect and enhance the wildlife area corridor that exists along the creek. I feel that these concerns can be adequately addressed in the ongoing approval process, however, and are not adequate reasons to oppose the development of the site. Although the Planning Commission voted to recommend that council approve the tentative sketch plan, as a resident of the borough, I am asking that the council take a hard look at the unsafe traffic conditions that the design proposes and demand that the developer adequately address them before being allowed to proceed with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brower. Any other members of the public? All right, hearing none, we thank you very much for your presentation. It is anticipated that this will be on council's agenda at the next meeting for a vote. All right. Any announcements? Agenda item 10. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Pananopoulos. All in favor? Aye. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all.